Have you ever wondered if a few simple words repeated for just 5 days could completely change the course of your marriage? Imagine saying something that seems ordinary, almost harmless, but carries a depth so powerful that it reaches the unconscious of the one you love. Carl Jung believed the unconscious is the silent force shaping every bond we have. And in marriage, it is this very force that decides whether love is lost in routine or transformed into something unbreakable. What if the true key to transformation was not in grand gestures or endless effort, but in the right words spoken at the right moment? Words that don't just pass through the ears but sink into the soul, leaving a mark that time cannot erase. In this video, you'll discover how 5 days can redefine years and why your marriage will never be the same once these secrets are revealed. The hidden power behind simple words. Most people think words are ordinary. They believe they are only sounds that fade after being spoken, while actions matter more. Yet Carl Jung revealed a deeper truth. Words are never empty. They carry symbols, and symbols shape the unconscious far more than logic. In marriage, these symbols decide whether passion grows or fades, whether loyalty strengthens or weakens. Simple words, when used with awareness, can transform everything. Think about how a short phrase can remain in memory for years. A child remembers hearing, "I believe in you." A lover remembers, "You are mine." These words live in the unconscious as anchors. They are not stored like plain sentences, but as emotional imprints. That imprint shapes choices, trust, and attachment. In a marriage, this hidden power is crucial. Without it, routine takes over, and the bond weakens. Jung explained that the unconscious does not work with reasoning. It speaks through symbols. A symbol can be an image, an object, or a phrase that represents more than itself. When you use words that act as symbols, you are not just speaking, you are awakening. For example, saying "I see you" is not just observation. In the unconscious, it confirms recognition, belonging, and value. These three experiences create the roots of intimacy and stability. In daily life, couples often ignore this. They assume love is known, so they stop repeating it. They stop showing gratitude. Silence replaces affirmation. Over time, the unconscious feels unseen. Even if love still exists, the lack of symbolic words drains the connection. The result is distance, tension, or a search for recognition elsewhere. The hidden power of words shows up in moments of vulnerability. During intimacy, conflict, or confession, defenses fall. The unconscious opens wide. Words spoken in those moments become permanent. They sink deeper than casual talk because they are tied to strong emotion. That is why repeating a phrase for 5 days at the right moment can be more powerful than years of shallow talk. It is not the size of the phrase, but the symbolic meaning behind it. Picture 2 scenarios. In the first, a wife says, "Don't forget to take out the trash." Functional, quickly forgotten. In the second, she says, "You make me feel safe." These words go beyond sound. In his unconscious, they symbolize strength and reliability. The same man who forgets chores will not forget a phrase that speaks to his identity. This is how words gain hidden power, by touching archetypes hidden in the psyche. Jung believed the unconscious carries archetypes, universal patterns of human experience. Words awaken these patterns. When a man hears phrases that connect to recognition, purpose, or belonging, the archetype responds. His unconscious links the woman who spoke them with fulfillment. Loyalty then grows naturally, not by force but by choice. His deeper mind begins to associate her presence with meaning and completion. Repetition deepens this effect. Saying something once touches the unconscious. Saying it for several days plants it firmly. The unconscious learns through repetition. Dreams repeat themes. Thoughts repeat patterns. A phrase repeated for 5 days becomes part of reality. He stops questioning and begins to believe it. This is why the challenge of "say this for 5 days" is powerful. It copies how the unconscious learns. This hidden power is also why words can wound. A cruel phrase spoken once can echo for decades. The unconscious does not forget symbols, whether they hurt or heal. Careless speech in marriage is dangerous. A single harsh sentence can scar. But used with care, words can do the opposite. They can heal, build, and bond. Marriages are rarely destroyed by lack of feeling. They fail through lack of recognition. Recognition comes through words. Not speeches, but simple affirmations spoken with truth. "I choose you." "You matter." "I see you." These are not casual statements. They are symbols telling the unconscious, "Here you are safe, here you belong, here you are whole." Once received, such words nurture fidelity as a natural response and deepen trust. Simple words hold hidden power because they act on the deepest part of the psyche. They bypass resistance, awaken archetypes, and plant loyalty. Many underestimate them because they seem small, but Jung understood. The smallest symbols often carry the greatest force. A marriage can be reshaped not by endless effort, but by simple words used with intention and truth. When repeated sincerely, they do not just change a moment, they can change an entire life. Why the unconscious decides more than love. Many people think love alone sustains a marriage. They believe that as long as two people love each other, everything else will fall into place. But Carl Jung showed that the forces guiding human behavior go far beyond what we consciously feel or declare. Love may inspire, but it is the unconscious that directs. In every choice, in every attraction, in every act of loyalty or betrayal, the unconscious holds the real power. This explains why someone can sincerely say, "I love you," yet act in ways that harm the relationship. The conscious mind declares love, but the unconscious drives behavior. Inside, there may be unresolved fears, hidden wounds, or unmet needs shaping decisions silently. Jung taught that until the unconscious is made conscious, it rules our lives and we call it fate. In marriage, this truth becomes clear. What truly decides the strength of the bond is not just affection, but what the unconscious accepts or rejects. Love alone is fragile when the unconscious is not aligned. A person may adore their partner, yet sabotage the relationship with jealousy, silence, or distance. These are not failures of love, but expressions of deeper forces. The unconscious holds symbols of safety, belonging, and identity. If these are not affirmed, no amount of declared love prevents disconnection. During intimacy, the unconscious becomes even more influential. Defenses fall and what is hidden rises. Words spoken in these moments bypass logic and reach the symbolic layer. A man may not consciously plan to attach deeply, but when his unconscious hears recognition, it binds him. He may not explain it, but his loyalty strengthens. This shows why the unconscious decides more than conscious emotion. It is the level where attachment is sealed. Consider how memories shape behavior. We do not remember every detail of daily life, but the unconscious stores the emotional meaning of experiences. A kind phrase spoken during vulnerability becomes a symbol of safety. A cruel phrase becomes a scar. Love declared in daylight may fade, but the unconscious never forgets the symbols received in decisive moments. This memory shapes whether passion grows or dies, whether trust deepens or collapses. The unconscious is also why repetition works. Hearing a meaningful phrase once touches the heart. Hearing it for 5 days engraves it. The unconscious thrives on patterns. Just as dreams repeat symbols, the psyche accepts repeated words as truth. Love may inspire you to speak once, but only repetition convinces the deeper self. That is why the challenge to speak intentionally for several days has transformative power. It aligns the unconscious with the marriage. Jung emphasized that archetypes live in every mind. These universal patterns, lover, protector, partner, are waiting to be activated. Love alone does not always awaken them. Words and symbols do. When you tell your partner, "You are the one I choose," you awaken the archetype of belonging. When you say, "You make me safe," you awaken the protector. These awakenings matter more than feelings of love, because they organize behavior at the deepest level. This is why some marriages last decades while others collapse quickly. It is not always about how much the couple loved each other at the start. It is about whether the unconscious was fed with recognition, safety, and meaning. Love without symbolic nourishment fades. But when the unconscious is engaged, bonds grow stronger with time. The unconscious also explains attraction beyond logic. A man may insist he wants independence, yet feel tied to the woman who spoke words that resonated with his hidden needs. He may claim he is not ready for commitment, yet remain loyal to the one who reached his psyche. These contradictions make sense once we accept that the unconscious decides more than conscious choice. In marriage, then, the task is not only to love, but to speak to the unconscious. Simple, authentic words repeated with intention become symbols. These symbols tell the deeper mind, "You are safe, you are chosen, you belong here." Once the unconscious accepts this truth, loyalty and passion follow. So why does the unconscious decide more than love? Because love is conscious, it can change with moods, with time, with stress. The unconscious is deeper. Once it accepts a symbol, it anchors behavior. Love may begin the story, but the unconscious decides how it ends. If you want to understand why these changes in marriage run so deep, the Jung Method gives you a simple path to see your hidden patterns. and truly transform your relationship. The link is pinned in the first comment. The invisible wall between routine and passion. Every marriage begins with energy, curiosity, and desire. In the early days, each glance feels exciting. Each word carries meaning. But over time, responsibilities, stress, and repetition build an invisible wall. This wall does not appear suddenly. It grows slowly as routines replace novelty and silence replaces curiosity. Couples may still love each other, yet they feel passion weakening. Carl Jung's ideas help explain why this wall forms and how the unconscious plays the main role in keeping it standing. Routine is not entirely negative. It creates safety, stability, and order. It provides predictability in a busy world. But when routine becomes dominant, it numbs the senses. The unconscious stops receiving signals of life and excitement. The same gestures that once brought joy now feel lifeless. Passion fades not because love has disappeared, but because the unconscious is no longer fed with symbols of renewal. Jung taught that when symbols lose energy, vitality fades. This truth applies in art, in faith, and in marriage. The wall grows thicker when words are missing. Couples may stop affirming each other, stop expressing gratitude, and stop offering recognition. Without these symbolic words, the unconscious begins to assume invisibility. A man may care deeply for his wife, but if he never hears "you matter to me," the wall strengthens. The unconscious craves recognition. Without it, it withdraws, quietly building barriers. This wall is invisible because on the surface everything seems normal. Bills are paid, schedules are followed, meals are prepared. But beneath the surface, the bond weakens. Routine may feed the conscious mind, but passion is nourished in the unconscious. Passion requires surprise, symbols, and meaning. Without them, partners may feel like roommates instead of lovers. They mistake stability for connection, unaware that a barrier is quietly separating them. Jung explained that change always begins with awareness. To break the wall, couples must admit it exists. Many deny it, believing routine is normal. But denial only reinforces the barrier. The unconscious cannot be deceived. If it does not receive vitality, it retreats. Recognition, novelty, and meaningful words are the tools that break the wall. Simple affirmations, unexpected kindness, or phrases of recognition remind the unconscious that passion still breathes. Imagine a marriage where the wall is ignored for years. Both partners still care but no longer feel alive together. Then one day, temptation arises. Affairs often occur not only from desire but from hunger for recognition. The unconscious seeks what it has been denied. When another person provides the missing symbols, the wall inside the marriage collapses further. This tragedy could often be avoided if recognition had been offered within the relationship itself. Breaking the wall does not demand grand gestures. It requires steady consistency. A phrase repeated for 5 days, spoken with sincerity, can remind the unconscious that love is alive. Words like, "I choose you," "you inspire me," or "you are my safe place" restore depth. They are not casual compliments. They are symbols. They bypass logic and feed the deeper mind. Through repetition, the unconscious begins to relearn that intimacy is alive. Passion rekindles not from pressure, but from recognition. Novelty also cracks the wall. Trying new activities together, creating rituals, or using fresh expressions sends symbols of renewal. Jung believed that when the unconscious receives new energy, it responds with vitality. Passion is not about constant excitement. It is about reminding the psyche that life moves and evolves. Even a single symbolic change can create openings in the barrier. Couples who ignore the wall risk emotional distance. They may blame love, but the true issue is neglect of the unconscious. Passion does not vanish naturally, it starves. To keep it alive, partners must provide symbols that carry meaning. This is why the practice of "say this for 5 days" is so effective. It is not magic. It is psychological nourishment. It tells the unconscious again and again that intimacy is real and present. In the end, the wall between routine and passion is not made of stone. It is built of silence, neglect, and lack of recognition. And like any wall, it can be dismantled. Words spoken with sincerity, repeated with intention, act like tools that chip away at it brick by brick. What begins as a small crack can grow into complete restoration. Couples who dare to speak truthfully and consistently rediscover passion and joy. The wall was never permanent, it only waited for symbols strong enough to break it. Symbols that speak louder than actions. We often hear that actions speak louder than words. Actions matter, but Carl Jung showed that something even more powerful shapes our lives. Symbols. A symbol is not only an object or a gesture, It is a bridge between the conscious and the unconscious. Words can become symbols, actions can become symbols, and silence itself can carry symbolic weight. In marriage, symbols often decide whether trust deepens or fades, whether passion grows or disappears. Actions work mainly on the surface. Paying bills, preparing meals, or completing chores are helpful, but they do not always touch the deeper mind. The unconscious looks not for routine but for meaning. A gift given without emotion can be forgotten quickly, but a simple phrase spoken at the right moment may last a lifetime. The unconscious does not measure effort in numbers. It values intensity. A single act filled with symbolic depth outweighs dozens of empty gestures. Dreams reveal this principle. A river, a door, or a key in a dream carries meaning far beyond its image. In the same way, a phrase like "you are my home" becomes a symbol of safety and belonging. It tells the unconscious that the bond is not casual but essential. No repeated surface act can match the weight of such recognition. Jung emphasized that people cannot live without symbols. They guide cultures, religions, and relationships. When a marriage loses its symbols, it loses vitality. Couples may live together, share duties, and keep order, but the soul of the relationship begins to dry. Without symbols, life becomes mechanical. With them, even small gestures carry depth. Symbols show their strength most clearly during moments of vulnerability. During intimacy, conflict, or confession, the unconscious listens closely. Words spoken in those moments bypass logic and enter directly into the psyche. Saying, "I choose you" at such a time is not only reassurance, it becomes a seal. It tells the unconscious the bond is exclusive and alive. Once received, such a symbol resists time and temptation. No rival can erase what the unconscious has already accepted. Repetition increases this power. A phrase spoken once may be remembered, but spoken for 5 days it becomes part of reality. The unconscious thrives on rhythm and pattern. Just as dreams repeat images, repeated words carve deep pathways in the psyche. What began as sound becomes truth. Loyalty then flows not from willpower but from unconscious certainty. This is why intentional speech, repeated consistently, can redefine a marriage more than years of routine effort. Actions by themselves reassure, but they rarely transform. A symbol transforms because it awakens archetypes. A man may see his partner's effort, but when he hears words that call forth the archetype of protector, partner, or chosen one, he feels it deeply. His loyalty grows not from duty but from identity. The unconscious has integrated the symbol, and identity shapes behavior more strongly than obligation ever could. Jung taught that symbols carry energy. They are alive. Rituals, phrases, and gestures have always connected humans to meaning. In marriage, they keep passion alive. Without them, bonds weaken over time. Recognition must be delivered through symbols, not just duties. Loyalty becomes unshakable when the unconscious accepts a symbol of belonging. Once this happens, no external temptation easily breaks the bond. Imagine a couple caught in routine. Everything runs smoothly, but meaning is absent. Then one day, one partner says, "You are my safe place." That phrase may last only seconds, yet it becomes eternal in the unconscious. It is not forgotten like a chore. It becomes a lasting anchor of safety. Symbols endure in ways that practical acts cannot. They continue to echo in memory, guiding trust and passion long after they are spoken. This is why speaking intentionally for 5 days matters. It is not about magic. It is about creating symbols that the unconscious accepts as truth. Repetition turns a phrase into a permanent reality. Once the psyche receives such nourishment, passion revives. The unconscious does not require dramatic displays. It requires symbols of recognition, repeated until they sink in. Love becomes alive again because it has been anchored at the deepest level. In the end, symbols speak louder than actions because they communicate in the only language the unconscious truly understands. Flowers may wither, but symbolic words endure. Duties may be forgotten, but symbols shape loyalty and belonging. Couples who learn to speak through symbols rediscover passion, trust, and unity. Once the unconscious accepts a symbol of love, fidelity is no longer just a choice. It becomes destiny. The moment when loyalty is redefined. Most people believe loyalty is built slowly through years of consistency. They picture it as something stored like savings, increasing little by little. But Carl Jung revealed that loyalty is not always the result of time. It can be redefined in a single instant. One phrase, one symbol, or one act at the right moment can transform how the unconscious views a bond. From that moment, fidelity is not just a conscious choice. It becomes a truth rooted in identity, The unconscious does not measure life by calendars. It measures intensity. A child remembers not every day with a parent, but a handful of decisive moments. A partner remembers not every dinner shared, but the moment they felt truly seen. The unconscious imprints what carries symbolic weight. This explains why one cruel word can overshadow years of kindness, or why one phrase of recognition can heal what seemed broken. Loyalty is not only about accumulation, it is about symbols that redefine the story. Intimacy magnifies this effect. During closeness, defenses lower and the unconscious listens intently. Words spoken then bypass logic and become permanent. Saying, "You are the one I choose" in such a moment is not casual. It awakens the archetype of belonging. It tells the unconscious that fidelity is not external but natural. From then on, the relationship stands on a deeper foundation. Loyalty is redefined, not as a rule, but as identity. Jung explained that archetypes live in all of us. They are universal patterns: protector, partner, lover, guide. When a phrase awakens one of these archetypes, attachment deepens beyond reason. A man who hears "you are my safe place" does not process it as mere comfort. His unconscious links it to the archetype of protector. Loyalty flows because his very identity is bound to the one who spoke those words. Fidelity shifts from duty to instinct. This also shows why betrayal cuts so deeply. A single act of disloyalty carries symbolic weight that can cancel years of commitment. The unconscious does not balance scales. It rewrites stories. A lie, an affair, even a broken promise can shatter trust because it enters the unconscious as a symbol of abandonment. This is why marriages cannot be sustained by love alone. They need symbols that heal, affirm, and redefine loyalty again and again. Repetition intensifies this redefinition. A phrase spoken once may touch the heart. Spoken for 5 days, it engraves itself. The unconscious learns through rhythm. Just as dreams repeat themes, repeated words carve deeper pathways. After 5 days of the same symbolic phrase, the unconscious no longer treats it as suggestion. It accepts it as truth. Loyalty becomes anchored in that rhythm. The conscious mind may still question, but the unconscious has already decided. Think of how people remember defining phrases. Many partners recall forever the moment they heard, "You are enough." They may forget thousands of daily details, but not that. Why? Because it became a symbol. It told the unconscious a story of worth, of belonging, of permanence. Loyalty was strengthened in that instant. This is the hidden power of moments that carry depth. They outweigh long stretches of routine. The task then is not to wait until loyalty weakens to repair it. It is to speak with intention while the bond is strong. Each intentional phrase becomes a turning point. It is not manipulation. It is nourishment. The unconscious does not respond to tricks. It responds to authenticity. When words are true and repeated with sincerity, they seal the bond naturally. Fidelity becomes more than commitment. It becomes the unconscious definition of self. Jung insisted that symbols hold more power than external rules. Rules are enforced from outside. Symbols live inside. A rule can be broken when no one is watching. A symbol cannot. Once the unconscious accepts a symbol, it becomes part of identity. This is why intentional speech has the power to redefine loyalty permanently. It shifts fidelity from effort to essence. The person does not remain loyal because they must. They remain loyal because they are. In the end, loyalty is not only the slow work of years, it is the imprint of decisive symbols. One phrase spoken with truth can change the future of a marriage. Repeating it for 5 days makes it unshakable. The unconscious, once it has accepted such recognition, no longer treats loyalty as choice. It treats it as destiny. And destiny, once sealed in the psyche, becomes stronger than temptation, stronger than fear, and stronger than time. When silence speaks louder than promises, people often believe that promises hold the greatest power in relationships. Words like "I will never leave you" or "I will always be here" sound strong, but Carl Jung understood that silence can sometimes carry even more meaning. Silence is not empty. It is full of symbols. It can heal, it can wound, and it can redefine intimacy. In marriage, silence often speaks louder than promises, because the unconscious listens not only to what is said but also to what is unsaid. Promises are conscious. They are chosen, declared, and often rehearsed. Silence, however, comes directly from the unconscious. A partner who stays present without words in a moment of pain gives more than comfort. They provide recognition. The absence of noise becomes symbolic. It tells the unconscious, "You are not alone. I am here with you." Such silence carries more permanence than promises. because it bypasses the surface mind and settles into the psyche. Jung explained that the unconscious communicates through symbols, not speeches. Silence is one of its oldest languages. In myths, in rituals, in sacred spaces, silence has always marked the presence of something deeper. In marriage, when two people share silence without fear, it becomes a symbol of safety. That moment tells the unconscious the bond is strong enough to survive without constant reassurance. It says we do not need to fill the space. Being together is enough. Of course, silence can also wound. Ignoring, withholding, or turning away speaks loudly too. The unconscious registers neglect as abandonment. A promise may declare loyalty, but silence filled with distance becomes a symbol of disconnection. This is why couples must learn to use silence carefully. It is not about avoiding words, but about allowing silence to serve as presence, not absence. Consider a moment of intimacy when no words are needed. Breathing together, holding hands, or simply being still becomes more powerful than declarations. The unconscious reads such silence as confirmation of trust. Promises may be forgotten, but the body remembers moments of shared stillness. They become anchors of belonging, permanent symbols carved into the psyche. Repetition shapes silence as much as it shapes speech. If promises are repeated daily but contradicted by neglect, they lose weight. But if silence is repeatedly shared in meaningful ways, it builds depth. Sitting together in the evening without distraction, walking quietly side by side, or holding each other after conflict. These rituals of silence feed the unconscious more than 1,000 words. They say we are safe, we are one. Jung noted that symbols of presence matter more than explanations. Silence can embody presence in ways words cannot. Many people try to fix problems with long conversations, but sometimes silence says more. It shows patience, acceptance, and strength. The unconscious interprets this as stability. Over time, such silent presence becomes one of the strongest foundations of loyalty. This is why silence during vulnerability is so decisive. In moments of grief, fear, or conflict, promises may sound hollow. Silence, however, proves itself. Staying present without rushing to fix or justify creates space for healing. The unconscious feels this as recognition. I am seen even when I do not speak. That symbol of unconditional presence often matters more than vows. Yet silence must be intentional. Silence used as punishment or avoidance destroys intimacy. The unconscious feels rejected. A wall forms. Couples must distinguish between silence that heals and silence that harms. Healing silence is full of attention, presence, and recognition. Harmful silence is empty, cold, and disconnected. The difference lies in whether the silence carries symbolic meaning of closeness or distance. Promises have their place. They give direction and reassurance, but silence sustains what promises begin. Loyalty is not proven only in words, but in the moments when no words are needed. A marriage that honors silence as symbol creates security the unconscious can trust. Such security transforms passion from fragile desire into lasting depth. Repetition strengthens this truth. 5 days of repeated silence shared intentionally can shift the unconscious more than repeated promises. Sitting quietly together while exchanging small gestures of affection builds symbols of trust. The unconscious thrives on this rhythm. It interprets silence not as emptiness but as fullness. What begins as quietness becomes certainty. The bond is unshakable. The hidden dialogue of desire and recognition. Every marriage carries 2 conversations. One is spoken aloud about schedules, bills, and responsibilities. The other is silent, hidden beneath the surface. This second dialogue is not about tasks, but about desire and recognition. Carl Jung revealed that the unconscious constantly speaks in symbols, and in marriage, it listens for signs of being valued. When the unconscious does not hear recognition, passion weakens. But when it receives symbolic confirmation, desire becomes stronger than routine. Desire is not only physical, it is the energy that flows when 2 people feel seen. Recognition fuels it. A partner who feels invisible begins to lose desire, no matter how much physical attraction once existed. On the other hand, a simple phrase of recognition can ignite passion even after years. The unconscious ties desire to meaning. If desire is linked to recognition, it becomes lasting. If not, it fades. Jung taught that every individual carries archetypes: the lover, the protector, the partner. When recognition activates these archetypes, desire grows naturally. For example, when a woman tells her partner, "You make me feel safe," she awakens the archetype of protector. The man does not just feel admired. He feels essential. The unconscious interprets this as proof of value. Desire then flows not from duty but from identity. He desires to stay, to give, to connect. The hidden dialogue of recognition often matters more than physical attraction. Many marriages collapse not because attraction is gone, but because recognition is absent. The unconscious does not thrive on surface compliments. It thrives on symbolic truth.
Saying you matter in a moment of vulnerability is far more powerful than physical gestures alone.
It tells the unconscious you are seen. That confirmation sparks passion because it aligns desire with meaning. Routine is the greatest enemy of this hidden dialogue. When daily life is reduced to chores and silence, recognition disappears. Couples begin to act like managers of tasks instead of partners in intimacy. The unconscious feels ignored. Desire weakens, not because the body has changed, but because the psyche has not been fed. Recognition must be repeated like nourishment. A single phrase can help, but repetition over days carves truth into the unconscious. This is why the practice of speaking with intention for 5 days is powerful. Desire is not kept alive only by touch, but by symbolic language. Words like "I choose you" or "you are my safe place" go beyond reassurance. Repeated for days, they become symbols the unconscious accepts as permanent. Once accepted, they reawaken passion. The body follows the mind and intimacy becomes charged again. Jung believed symbols carry energy because they awaken archetypes. Desire is strongest when it flows through archetypal meaning. A protector feels desire when he is recognized as strong. A lover feels passion when seen as unique. Recognition awakens these patterns and desire emerges as natural response. Without recognition, desire dries up. With it, even routine moments glow with intensity. This hidden dialogue also explains why some couples resist temptation. It is not only moral strength. It is because recognition at home feeds desire. The unconscious binds loyalty to the one who provides recognition. No rival can easily compete with the person who awakens archetypes consistently. Desire remains because recognition keeps the bond alive at the deepest level. Silence, however, can destroy this dialogue. Ignoring, withholding words, or assuming the other already knows are silent forms of rejection. The unconscious registers them as abandonment. Over time, this silence builds distance. Desire cannot live in the absence of recognition. It withers until only routine remains. Promises of love may still be spoken, but without symbols, they fail to reach the unconscious. The path to restore this dialogue is not complex. It begins with small phrases spoken with truth, repeated with care. Repetition teaches the unconscious to believe again. Once it feels recognized, desire flows naturally. Passion is not reignited by force, but by recognition repeated until it becomes identity. In the end, the hidden dialogue of desire and recognition is what sustains marriage. Physical attraction begins the story, but recognition writes the rest. When partners learn to speak with symbols that affirm value, desire no longer depends on novelty. It becomes rooted in meaning. And once the unconscious has accepted recognition as truth, desire and loyalty grow together, stronger than time, stronger than routine. The final transformation after 5 days. Every process of change in marriage begins small, but after repetition it takes root in the unconscious. Carl Jung taught that transformation is not about grand gestures, but about symbols accepted by the psyche. When partners speak with intention for 5 days, they create a rhythm strong enough to awaken loyalty, passion, and depth. What begins as words becomes truth, and what begins as effort becomes destiny. The unconscious does not need 1,000 repetitions. It needs symbolic consistency. 5 days of intentional speech may sound small, but for the psyche it is decisive. Each day builds on the last, teaching the unconscious to accept the symbol as real. By the 5th day, the words no longer feel like phrases, they feel like identity. Loyalty is redefined, not through force, but through recognition. Desire is renewed, not through novelty, but through meaning. Security is restored, not through promises, but through permanence. This transformation happens because the unconscious thrives on patterns. Just as dreams repeat images until they leave an impression, repeated phrases carve paths in the psyche. After 5 days, the unconscious carries the rhythm forward. It continues to echo even when silence returns. The symbol has been planted and it continues to grow. This is why the practice of repetition holds such power. It shapes the future of the bond. Consider how small actions create lasting change. A single drop of water repeated long enough carves stone. A phrase repeated with truth carves loyalty into the unconscious. The bond no longer depends on external rules or circumstances. It becomes anchored in identity. The partner no longer remains faithful only by choice, but because the unconscious has embraced the symbol as part of self. This is the secret of lasting transformation. 5 days are not magic. They are psychology. They provide the unconscious with evidence it craves. Repetition proves seriousness. Consistency proves recognition. Authenticity proves love. When all three combine, the unconscious accepts the bond as permanent. At this point, passion rekindles naturally because it has been fed. Love regains energy because it has been anchored. Loyalty becomes stronger because it has been sealed. Jung emphasized that all true transformation is symbolic. The psyche cannot be convinced by surface effort alone. It responds to meaning. 5 days of symbolic speech deliver meaning in doses the unconscious can absorb. They are not heavy promises or dramatic declarations. They are steady signals repeated until they break through. Once the unconscious accepts them, the change is no longer fragile. It is solid, enduring, and alive. Couples who ignore this principle often wonder why love fades. They assume feelings simply change with time. But the truth is that the unconscious was starved. Without symbols, passion weakens. Without recognition, loyalty erodes. Without meaning, intimacy becomes routine. The difference after 5 days of intentional speech is that the unconscious has been given food. It has been reminded that love is not only alive, it is essential. Imagine the transformation. On day 1, the words sound simple. On day 2, they feel warmer. By day 3, the unconscious begins to listen more closely. By day 4, it expects the rhythm. And by day 5, it accepts the phrase as truth. At this point, the bond has been redefined. The unconscious carries the symbol forward, feeding passion and loyalty far beyond the 5 days themselves. A cycle of recognition has begun, and it sustains the marriage for the future. This is the final transformation, the moment when love ceases to depend only on effort and becomes rooted in meaning. The unconscious, once fed, does not forget. It continues to echo the rhythm of recognition, keeping passion alive. Loyalty becomes instinct, desire becomes natural, security becomes permanent. 5 days of truth have rewritten the story of the marriage, and from that point, the relationship no longer struggles to survive routine. It thrives because it has been anchored in symbols that the psyche will always recognize. In the end, the transformation after 5 days is proof that small acts, repeated with sincerity, outweigh years of silence. It is not about control, tricks, or empty promises. It is about feeding the unconscious with symbols until it believes again. And when it believes, everything changes. The way partners see each other, the way they desire, the way they remain loyal. This transformation is not temporary. It is the foundation of a bond that grows stronger with time, meaning, and truth.